So this is the other worksheet that goes with this video, and it's really, this is a plumbing mapping of the major blood vessels of the body, guys. So on here we've got the heart in the middle, and you got your pretty, I think, clearly labeled things like your right atrium and the right ventricle and the left atrium and the left ventricle, and those types of things. And everything else, every one of these boxes is actually the name of a blood vessel that we want to ultimately learn. Okay. Those names are on the next page here, so let me show you that. So notice a couple things about this, and then I'll give you a second to jot it all down. On the left here, these are the major arteries. So arteries are always carrying blood away from the heart. So in this case, I've written everything as like to the lungs, to the chest, because they're always going away from the heart. So it's a nice, simple way of saying it. You could say from the heart to the lungs. That's what the pulmonary artery really does, but I think that's a little repetitive. So I would put up here, always away from the heart and going back towards the heart. So it's going from the lungs back towards the heart, from the chest back towards the heart, from everywhere below the chest back to the heart. Okay, so I think you're going to be okay reading these. I know my chicken scratch isn't the greatest here, guys, but let's run through them real quick, and then I would suggest pausing it afterwards and then jotting it all down. Okay, so you got the pulmonary artery, big artery that goes to the lungs. Okay. You got the ascending aorta, or sometimes called the aortic arch. I think that's a good idea to write that up in there. Okay, so the aortic arch, which is going to go to your chest and your arms and your head, and then your descending aorta, which is going to go to everything below the chest. So every organ's going to get some of that. Okay, the coronary arteries, okay, go to the actual heart muscle, the myocardium of your heart. So your heart is just like every other organ, just like your brain. It needs to actually be delivered oxygen. So it's got an artery that goes right to it. Then you got the common carotid arteries that go up to your head. Those are the big ones in your neck. The subclavian arteries go under the clavicle, subclavian, out to the arms. You have what's referred to as the celiac artery, which then splits into three different pieces. So it's this big artery comes off the descending aorta, and it splits into the splenic that goes to the spleen, the hepatic that goes to the liver. Remember, hepa is a liver prefix, and gastric, which goes to the stomach. And then you've got two separate arteries that go to the intestines. You got the superior mesenteric and the inferior mesenteric, and they really kind of go to the top half and the bottom half of the intestines is really what you're looking at there. All right. Renal, we should remember from last unit, going to the kidneys. And then the common iliac arteries split right at your belly button and pretty much go down to each leg. And then they've got lots of branches after that, guys. These are just some of the major ones. Okay. Over on the right-hand side, you've got the pulmonary veins coming back from the lungs. You've got the superior and inferior vena cava, which you've learned previously. The cardiac veins are what brings the blood back from that heart muscle. So the coronary arteries take it to the heart muscle. The cardiac veins bring it back. The common carotid arteries took the blood to the head, so the jugular veins bring it back from the head. Subclavian arteries to the arms, from the arms. Splenic from the spleen, from the liver, from the stomach, from the upper and lower intestines, kidneys, and then from the legs. All right, so you should pause this and fill that part in on your sheet, and then pick it right back up when you're ready. All right, so with those names in hand here, this on the back is supposed to be a diagram showing you each of those blood vessels. So I'd like to do a couple with you. Then I'm going to ask you to pause it, try and label the rest as you can, and then come back and check it. And just years of doing this, guys, that works better than you just copying down all of it. So that is the direction I'm giving you. Hopefully you will listen with that and do a good job. Okay. So let's start off with a couple that I think are the hardest ones and go from there. So each box is supposed to be the name of a blood vessel. So coming out of the left ventricle here, coming out this way to this box, this is your aorta. Okay, so if you want to label that in there. And in reality, that's what we refer to as like the ascending aorta. And then it's or the aortic arch. And then it's really gonna kind of split into two separate pieces here. You got the aortic arch up this way, and then you've got your descending aorta. And I wouldn't do the abbreviations like I'm doing, guys. I would write it out. You have enough room. You'll have to write small. With my pen on this iPad, it's not going to work very well, so you're going to have to deal with my abbreviations, okay? All right, so let's just follow one loop here, and then I'm going to let you guys try and figure out the rest of them and then come back and check it out. Okay, so let's go up this ascending aorta. Let's go to here, going into the arms. Okay, this is going to be your subclavian artery. Okay, so subclavian artery, right? Because we're going away from the heart into the arms. Okay, and once it gets in the arms, this goes through capillaries, all that kind of stuff inside here in the arms. Drops off the oxygen, but it comes back through the subclavian vein into the superior vena cava, right? And then that's going to flow us right back into the right atrium. And notice the right atrium goes to right ventricle out through the pulmonary artery, because we're going away from the lung. That's going to be the only artery on this side of the paper, guys. So I'll mark that kind of special here. It's going to be the only artery on that side of the paper. Goes into the lungs, goes into the capillaries in the lungs, drops off the oxygen, and we're going to come back here through the pulmonary veins. And again, that's going to be the only vein on this half of the paper, right? Because normally veins are carrying deoxygenated blood, and this whole right side is showing kind of the oxygenated red stuff, right? And then that flows into the left atrium and so forth. Okay, so why don't you pause it, try and use the front side. You should be able to do everything except for right here. I'll give you one more. This is what's referred to as the actually, I got to do one more little section with you here. Okay, so remember earlier there was one that we referred to as the celiac artery, and I actually don't have a box for that. So the celiac artery is right here. Okay, so that's the celiac artery, and remember it splits into three pieces. This is going to be the splenic artery, the hepatic artery going into the liver. It's got the gastric artery, and then you've got the superior mesenteric artery and inferior mesenteric artery. Just pause and let you get those down. All right. Now, there's one weird thing with the way the blood flows in the body. Normally, it does what we did up here. It goes to the arms and back to the heart and lungs. This is the exception here. So when we leave the stomach, we leave through the gastric vein, the superior mesenteric vein, the inferior mesenteric vein. And remember, we actually talked about this a lot with the digestive system. All the blood that leaves those organs is going to swing by the liver for processing before shipping out to the body. So what we have here is the exception to the rule. This is called the hepatic portal vein. It's on the front side of your sheet there. You'll see it right near where it says gastric and mesenteric. Okay, that's the hepatic portal vein. And the hepatic portal vein takes all of the blood that's leaving your stomach and your intestines, flowing by the liver, and then your liver makes small changes, right? Stores some of the vitamins and minerals, changes all the monosaccharides into glucose, and then ships it out through the hepatic vein, okay? And the hepatic vein then will flow into this inferior vena cava and back to the heart. And now that blood can go through the heart-lung cycle and be shipped to everywhere in your body, okay? So this is the only other really weird one we have. We got the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary veins that we marked up there, but that hepatic portal vein is an odd one. Most times the blood flows to one destination and back, but there's about 2 or 3 exceptions like this that I know of where the blood goes by one organ, then swings by another. So it's coming from the stomach, then swinging by the liver, and then back to the heart and lungs. It doesn't do that with the spleen. It goes from the spleen back to the heart. It doesn't do that with the head or the brain or the arms or anywhere else in the body that we'll talk about. All right, so why don't you guys pause it, try and fill in the rest of the information there, and then we'll come right back to it. All right, so let's double check it and see how you did here. So let's start at the top, going into the head and neck. This is going to be the common carotid artery, and then coming out would be the jugular vein. All right, down here you've got the splenic artery, so this would be splenic vein coming out of there. Let's see, going into the kidneys would have been the renal artery, and then coming out of the kidneys after we've filtered all that blood would be the renal vein, and then this would be the common iliac artery going into the legs, and the common iliac vein coming out that way. And notice that everything down here is going to flow up this way, so from the legs, from the kidneys, from the liver, from the whole lower half of the body flows into that inferior vena cava, so it gets bigger and bigger. It's like little streams flowing into a big river that goes into that right atrium and then dumps the blood back into the heart and then off to the lungs again. Right. So this sheet is going to be really useful for you guys because one of the things I'm going to ask you to do at some point in your project is to follow the drop of blood flowing through there. And this is a nice plumbing map. So if I said, hey, we start in the head, follow how that gets to the arms. Well, from the head to the arms, it would have to go here. Let's see how to do this. Okay. See if I can pick a nice different color and make it stand out here. Okay, so we're going to go from the head, neck, and arms out through here. Comes down. It can't go this way, guys. It's a one-way street. So it has to go into that superior vena cava, down into the heart, the right atrium, right ventricle, out into the lungs, picking up oxygen, getting rid of the carbon dioxide, pulmonary vein, into the left atrium, left ventricle, out the aorta, ascending aorta, and now it goes subclavian artery out into the arms. Okay, and if we wanted to go from someplace else, guys, you just have to follow the plumbing, follow all the arrows, and it runs you right to where you're supposed to be. All right. So, quick recap to things we were supposed to get out of this video. Wanted to talk about the fact that arteries are always going away from the heart, and veins are always going back to the heart. And typically, you're going to go to one organ and back, and then flow back there. So, if we leave the heart right here, we leave through this aorta, okay, and we go up here and we come off the aortic arch and we go up to the head and neck. We're going from arteries into arterioles into capillaries. Now we're actually exchanging all those nutrients. Then we're flowing back through the venules and veins back into the superior vena cava, back into the heart, out to the lungs where we do the exact same thing. Arterioles, capillaries, picking up oxygen, getting rid of carbon dioxide. Venules and veins, remember these are going to be the only ones that are kind of red arteries and blue veins, back into the heart, and then we can pump it back out to another destination. So this time we could go down to the legs, and we go artery down to arterial, capillaries, make the exchange, then venules, veins, and bring it back up. Okay. Big overview from that standpoint. Hopefully that helps. Mark anything you want to talk about, and I'll see you in class.